and welcome to the New Earth Co-Creators podcast. We're excited to be here. I'm Deborah Bishop, or Rev Deb, as you prefer, and I'm here, of course, with the delightful, the beautiful, the gorgeous Isabel Hunt. It's so good to see you this morning, honey. How are you?
Good. I have my coffee. I'm good.
I have mine.
It's been a bit of a rough morning, with some kids, but and my own, but it's all good.
Gotcha. Well, you showed up as we do, which is important.
Yeah.
And actually, we were kind of, as we do, we have very impromptu and very real, very raw, unrehearsed conversations on this podcast, which I love. I love that we do that.
Mm.
And I was asking you, as we have to do, what shall we talk about today? And I loved what you came up with. So please share with our audience what was on your heart.
Yes. Well, the topic has been coming up over and over, even, with the dynamic of children, where we really want our children to, be really in tune with what they want to do, who they are, and get inspired and taking inspired actions, and following that flow, staying in the flow, creating things with ease and attracting things to us. Yet I have noticed, and that really, there's a lot going on inside of me where I'm just like, where I'm realizing how it can also disrupt a group dynamic. So, for example, if you're on a team and you have someone who is all about staying in the flow and just in the moment doesn't want to do anything, right? And just doesn't want to really be part of it, how does it affect the dynamic of the team? How does it affect the other team members and their efforts in what they are creating together and what they committed to creating together? So there's those two sides, and it has come up over and over the last couple of weeks, and I'm just like, you know what, it's really bothering me because I am more of the, okay, what's in the highest and best good for the community first, before I say what is mine and what do I need to do. And I have a bit of a different opinion on it anyway, so I brought that up this morning. I'm like, let's talk about it.
Well, and it's so good. Okay, if you hear this really weird rumbling going on, it's like for some reason Chooks is back here and he's deciding to be very verbal this morning. So hang on one second. Chookie, Chook, hey, Papa. Come on. So sorry about that, guys. It's live. It's real life. So I think this is a really interesting dance that we do, Chooks.
He agrees with the topic.
He agrees entirely.
Yes,
I'm in community. I'm communicating with my community. Okay, we're gonna get really loud for a second. So, how about? Okay, no, he just settled down. Yay! Thank you, baby. Okay, so I think it's a really delicate dance because there's a really important thing to distinguish here, and that is, like, it's actually very important that we take care of ourselves. Yeah. And that we put our oxygen masks on first, right? So that's a very important part. However, what I am also hearing you say, and this is why it's important for distinction, is when we are in community, it is not just about us, it's actually about how we collaborate inside that community, because it is a co-creation. And what's fascinating about all of this is human beings are an interdependent species. Mm-hmm. We need each other. We are not here to do it all by ourselves, right? So this art of collaboration, and I do believe it is an art, is something that is not really taught. So you can go into corporate America, you can have your team building exercises. In fact, my interactive entertainment company used to do team building exercises. We went to Hawaii and a bunch of places.
I do that with my kids too, yeah.
And it's like the team building is great and they love it and they learn how to work together and so forth. But there's no real practical application as to how we would do this sort of offline, if you will, outside of the corporate entity or outside of the classroom. And I think that's part of what you're talking about. People going with the flow, which is so important. We want to know our flow. We want to walk through the doors that open, but at the same time, collaborating so that they're not, I'm going to go with my flow and therefore I'm damming up the flow of the community and it can't flow there, but it's flowing fine for me. There's this way of thinking that I don't know if we've really developed it collectively to understand how to even communicate that to one another.
I honestly, I don't think we do. Because like I said, I see it now even with children, now that I work more with children, how that impacts, the development as well. When you have like an important event going on and just one of them, I'm staying in the flow, but I don't feel this right now, so I'm not going to do it. Just don't take it personally. It jeopardizes so much for the rest of the group. And if I just see that within a small group like that, we know, we've seen it within Neura's co-creators as well, right? Where people are just like, well, I need to stay in my flow and see you later, bye. And the rest of the group is like, sorry, what? Like, huh?
And it's drastic because we've seen it go from I'm doing this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this for you guys and I'm going to put this out there and we're going to do this together, to that same message going, oh, you know what? I really can't do this right now. I realize that I've got other stuff going on. And so that's what you're saying exactly, was just like everybody starts to come together and is excited because somebody steps up, and then it becomes inconvenient one way or another, or there's a lesson that they suddenly realize they need to learn. And rather than presenting it to the community and perhaps being vulnerable enough to sort of continue moving forward and saying, I need more support. I thought I was going to lead this, but maybe I need more support. Instead, it's a close the door, drop out. I'll see you later. I'll come back when I feel better. And that's kind of what we're talking about, because how do you build something if, I'll take the nails, I'll take the hammer, I've got the blueprints, I've got the wood, and then all of a sudden the person who's got the blueprints goes, you know what, I'm just not feeling it today, and all we've got is a person with a hammer, a nail, and the wood showing up, right? How do we build it?
Yeah, but you see it everywhere, especially within the spiritual community.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's why it's so very difficult to really create a powerful community that can stand together when things get rough. I think I've mentioned it maybe in one of the early, maybe I don't know. Well, I have this example, right? I mean, what we're seeing right now, there is a spiritual war going on. We can't deny it anymore. It is happening, right? People are waking up left and right, and yet we're all kind of lost. But then there's also this governmental entity that says, well, but you're going to do things we want you to do and how we want them to do. And it's just like in the medieval ages where there was the king and there were those little villages. And when the villages weren't doing exactly what king wanted, he sent out the soldiers and slaughtered them all as an example for the rest of them to demand obedience. Yet we also, if you think about it, all these little villages were, less than 100 people. But what would happen if we were to really come together as a united front to say, this is enough and we're done with this. We want a different way. We want it to be a different way. And instead, people even within those communities start to go against each other because they don't believe a certain thing that the extreme as the others, or not the same way as the others. And so we're creating little pockets here and there, and you have a divided front, and the divided front is very easy to conquer.
Yes.
And that's what we're seeing just in the smallest thing. We're seeing it in the family units. That's why so many families fall apart. I don't feel it anymore. Okay, I'm just gonna go. I don't really care what the impact is on the family unit itself, right? We see it with friendship circles. We see it in churches as a spiritual circle, right? We see it outside of that. We see it in the entrepreneur community. We see it in the New Earth communities that are popping up everywhere. And yet we have this division because it's like, but that doesn't align with me, and that doesn't, and I don't feel like doing this. Instead of.
But that's what you just said, something that I wanted to jump on. You said that there's New Earth communities that are popping up everywhere. And that's exactly what we're talking about, right? It's not, well, here's the New Earth community. Let's look at, let's collaborate with those people. Let's go and see what they're doing or whatever. Because it's not like we don't show up, right? We do show up if people are researching or looking for it. We have the New Earth co-creators. But instead of kind of saying, hey, let's bring all of these ideas together under this banner, or I mean, I think you and I would both agree if there was a different banner that was more established, that was larger, that was already doing stuff, we would like happily collaborate and flow into that,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and it's like, but instead of that happening, we have all of these little groups that form and do their thing and are trying to fight the good fight, but they're small, and these small little groups are staying
There's
so
also
disconnected.
competition between those groups.
Yes. They're staying disconnected. They're competing. It's like somebody that's wanting to start this group looks at another group and goes, hey, yeah, but that's not me. I didn't start that. So then they've got to start it.
Yeah.
And then they've got to lead it their way. Even if it's identical, it's like they're higher, that lower ego, it fights with that higher consciousness and says, yes, but it has to be my face. Yes, but it has to be the colors that I picked. And it's like, are those the things that are important, or is it actually the unification? And this is the thing that I think is really at the heart of this, is all of these separate things that compete with one another, when the heart cause, the root that we're looking for, this new earth, this new way of doing things, is really the foundation that's not getting built on. Right? It's not getting built on because everybody's trying to lay their own foundation and saying, oh, you've got to build on mine, which is not this, is that not the same as what religion has done, in the respect that we are the religion you must believe in. This is the one God. And if you don't believe in this religion, well, I'm going to be very fire and brimstone for a second. I don't believe any of this, by the way, but this is my religion. If you don't believe in this, you're going to go to hell, right? That's a very drastic representation. However, is it not on the same playing field somehow?
I don't have the answer to what we need to do and how we need to show up. I have an idea, right? But I don't have the answer. And I think that's why more people need to have these conversations. What is it where I actually contribute to that division? Like, even for me, it's like I'm sitting in this class this morning. I'm like, how do I teach those children a level of respect for each other, for the people that they're working with, to create a unit, to create a community? Did I do teamwork? Yes. Team building? Yes. But there's still, again, there's those people who start to make fun of other kids, and I'm like, that's not polite. Like, this is absolutely not part of how we deal here. Well, he doesn't have to take it personally. And those are kids who do know the 4 and 5 agreements, and they are using that against each other. And that makes me really like, what are we doing in the society? How can we teach those kids that there is, this in between where we use that, yet still have respect and compassion for other people, instead of just sitting in front of their faces and making fun of them, the way they talk or the way they look? If you look just at this example of children, we do it as adults. We talk to children about don't be a bully, when we're all bullies online and with each other and within our, relationships. And I'm just like, what can we do to shift that already on a young age level, to really help them understand? Yet when they go home, they hear one thing, and then they hear one thing from me, and then one thing on TV,
Right.
and what they're seeing, and there's just no united message that they hear, where I'm like, oh, okay.
There is one united message that they're hearing, and that is the overarching agenda that's going on, that's trickling in through mainstream media and through all of the different things. I mean, for this moment, I lived in Hollywood. I actually love LA. I always have. I come from an entertainment background, so I say this with all due respect to everybody in the industry, because I know how hard people work. You just have to look, though, at the products that are coming out, that are being manufactured, that are being greenlit, all this stuff that's being spoon fed to everybody. These are the movies that we watch. These are the shows that are on TV. These are the focuses of these things. And whether we like it or not, we have to deal with the fact that we are living in a society, and our children are growing up in a society where that has almost more say than anything else, because the screens are the things that people are paying attention to more than anything else. Bless you. Bless you. That was a good silent sneeze. Good timing. so that's also part of it, right? Like there's definitely other media, there's other projects. Look at the documentary that you did, the movie that you know about connecting, and there's other things going on. I mean, I've done podcasts, I've done different talk shows, I've done different things over time. There's the whole Gaia network that's out there that has really amazing content and amazing shows, but the one thing they don't have is that corporate support, right? They don't have the big dollar support. Now, they could become as prominent as everything else if we, the people, actually stopped arguing with each other and competing against each other and started to band together and actually support the things that we would choose to support. I mean, sure, 10 of us getting together, yay. I mean, that may change some things in all of our lives, and there is a ripple effect that I totally believe in. But 100,000 of us getting together, that starts to be something that has some power to it. A million of us, and when you think there's billions of people on the planet, a million's not that many. A million of us getting together starts to become its own conglomerate. And that's my hope in community at this point, that we are able to somehow become our own network, right? Like this is the structure we live in. I don't want to compete with that. I want to learn from it and evolve with it. Take it to another level that doesn't exist at this time. That's my personal vision.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we created New Earth Co-Creators, right? We wanted that to be almost like a hub where people can come together, where they can ask for support, where they can receive for support, where they can ask for resources. You never know. We all have different skill sets, different knowledge, different resources that we can share, right? But yet I am seeing it that so many people hold on tight to what they know and what they have and don't get it out there and don't share it with people, or that's too much, or I'm already overwhelmed. It's I see it within family dynamics as well, where I'm like, well, I'm just overwhelmed. And so I respond this and this way to my children. Yes, I get it, because obviously I have been there. I sometimes get there still. I don't have 3, 4, 5 kids. I have one. So of course I don't have as much schedule things to, but I have to deal with. But it's also a choice, in the way we choose to live. What aligns? Does my kid need 5 activities a week? No. There's certain boundaries, but I see it how a lot of times we excuse our behavior within the community dynamic, even family, that includes family, on the surface of me, but I am overwhelmed, but I am feeling this and I am doing this. And it doesn't support the unit, the family unit, the relationship between people. And I'm really, I don't know. I said to one of my friends, I'm like, what is it that you need that you can shift within your family that supports you, but also supports the family dynamic? Well, I can't change anything. There's too much going on. All of this is overwhelming.
This is why it was a tribe, right? This is why it was like we used to be the tribes, where children got raised by not just their parents.
Yeah.
They got raised by the community. We have moved away from all of that. If somebody chooses to have 5 kids, which to me is wow, right? Like, wow, okay.
I grew up with 4 siblings. Yeah, I know.
It's like once you have 3, they outnumber you, and it's like, woohoo. But here's the deal. It's like even just one child, right? Like if you don't have, I grew up where there was no family, there was none of that because my parents were immigrants. So, that was it. It was just us. It was our family unit. And as the family started to fall apart, there was nowhere for anybody to go. There was no cousin, no aunt, no uncle, no grandparent. And there was, I suppose, extended family, but my parents were of that sort of British mindset, having been born and raised in Africa from British descent. They just you don't ask for help. You don't do that. You just stay contained. And it would have been so incredibly life-changing if we'd had that community. I know that for a fact. If there had been some place to go that was safe to go to, that could like just create breathing room for everybody to figure out what was going on, or just to be able to know that there's stability, would have made a huge difference for everybody, my parents included. And we live in this weird society now where that's almost the model, though. It's like, here, I'm in the South, so yeah, there's more families and grandparents and so forth, but everybody seems just a little bit lost.
Yeah, I miss those times. I mean, growing up, we were 5 children, right? And it was a lot for my mom. We were 4 under 4, and I know, right? 4 under 4, and then my youngest brother's 9 years younger. He was a bit of a surprise. He wanted to join us still, but both of my grandparents lived down the road. So that means my grandparents were often over at our house. We went into their, we have like garden units in here. So it was this, we have neighbors that we went to. It wasn't like, oh my God, my mom has to be with us all this time. There was help there. And I can tell it makes a difference, because I don't have that. And I didn't have that with Jonah. The closest relative is 2 hours north of us.
Right.
So it's hard to just go and leave. And, while my mother-in-law is incredibly amazing and she does it, but, it's still, you can't just jump over in 5 minutes and say, oh yeah, I'll be there tonight. Right? Today is wonderful. It's like,
it's just one of those things. Yes.
The energy is like, yep, well, that's the topic, but we don't really want to talk about it. So we just interrupt. My computer too, it's bringing all kind of messages up. I'm just like, what is going on? But anyway, I see the difference just with one child, how I wish there was more support, and I don't have quite that network locally either. So that is definitely missing. And I'm just, like I said, I keep wondering, especially within spiritual communities, if you want to raise your child with the understanding, you just stay in the flow and you do what aligns with you and inspired actions, then you have to pick stuff that is just them, like where there's no team involved.
Well, but
where they don't have to deal with other people and actually have to think, how does that impact? How does what I want impact the people that I committed to working with?
Yes. And how does what I want align with the people that I'm committing to? Because that's the thing that's missing from the teaching. Will align, be in your vibration. If it doesn't work for your vibration, just, don't do it. It's like, but wait a minute, that only works, as you said, if you're on your own and you're not connected to anything or anyone, and you only have to show up for yourself. And that is not life, right? People live that way, but that's really not life. That's not how we're designed. That's why I think there's so much depression and so much disconnection and so much uncertainty and fear. But that keeps people in discord with each other. So that is its own thing. But it's also teaching a child, okay, being in the flow, doing what feels good, but recognizing that there is a collaboration to that. There is a place where then you join with like-minded individuals to work on something that is like-minded. And then you recognize that going with the flow does not mean that you're not going to hit rapids. It doesn't mean that there won't be some rocks. It doesn't mean that you may not have to go ashore for a minute,
Uncomfortable. Yeah. Like being okay with the uncomfortable. That's one thing that I'm really learned through all these communities and being part of communities for myself. Can I sit with the uncomfortable, even if people keep triggering me and I'm like, oh, this is annoying me, and this is like, can I still stick with it? Can I get to an internal place where I can stay in the flow for myself and yet still be committed to that community, right? To that structure of community? It's the same with marriages. Can I take care of myself and stay in the flow with myself? And even if my husband triggers me and drives me insane or whatever's going on, I can still be committed to that and we can work it out together, right? I think often we forget spiritual doesn't mean it's all going to be comfortable and you're not going to have any growing pains. It being in the flow,
it means exactly the opposite, actually. Spiritual means that there can
Right.
be a lot of discomfort and a lot of growing pains because we have so many things to move through to actually get into alignment.
Yeah. It just, it just came up over and over. And I'm like, what can we do differently to really shift that more, that it just works more like a puzzle piece, where we can be that individual puzzle piece and it's pretty, and then we can create art by coming together.
But that's the whole thing with a puzzle, right? There is no individual puzzle, right? If there's one
Mm.
piece in a puzzle, it's not a picture. It's not a puzzle, it's a picture, right? So
Yeah.
if we are part of a puzzle, then we all fit together, so that's what we're really talking about, is like we're not our own picture, even though it's its own separate little piece. It fits with all of these other pieces, which is life on this planet, which is like, okay, we're not just the only life on this planet. I really wish that people would just wake up a little bit more on that, and I know there's a lot of people doing amazing work around all of that. However, just even the simplest things, the acts of recycling, even if you have to drive it somewhere, like just realize like there's this planet is alive and there's life on this planet that's reliant on what we do or what we don't do, and it's like we're not the be all and end all, right? We're part of an entire ecosystem, and we're part of that ecosystem. We're an ecosystem. Our entire physical being is an ecosystem.
Right.
And
if our organs wouldn't collaborate with each other, we'd be dead.
exactly. And when we have such a misalignment, which appears to be happening, right? And it's all illusions anyway. It's all these different realities happening all at the same time. So it's a really interesting conversation. However, when you have a great collective amount of people believing that, we're dealing with all of this strife and sickness and all of that. Well, isn't it interesting that we have a great amount of people who are also sick and dealing with cancer and dealing with all of these autoimmune things and everything else that are happening? Is that not in alignment with what's happening on the planet? It's like I've looked around my neighborhood. I know it's kind of a slight right turn, but it's like, and I'm seeing for really the first time in my life, and I've always had trees around me, all these trees that are not surviving, right?
Oh, yes. I actually, it's interesting. We have a willow tree out here, which is really, really beautiful. And our neighbor doesn't care much about environment. She sprays all over everywhere. Our side of the tree, it's on a split property. Our side of the tree is really pretty. The other side is dead. Same with other trees here, our side, because I always watch when people spray. I'm staying there on purpose so they don't get onto our property.
Right.
Our side is pretty and green, other side is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, are you not aware of that, what you're doing? Like, are you not seeing that? It's so interesting how we're not capable of seeing the entire picture, how our individual actions impact the whole.
Yep. And that's that whole thing. It's the same thing, even though it was a slightly left turn. That was actually a true in line with what we're talking about, because I'm going to spray my yard, and it's like, okay, but this spray that you use on your yard is actually poisoning the earth. And when it rains or does anything, it's trickling. No matter how well you take care of your yard, it's trickling into your yard. It's going in that direction. I mean, how do we end up with Roundup in the ocean, right? And way, way out where there's no land to be seen and there's Roundup in the water. How does that happen? Well, because of all of this, high tech farming, all the spraying of things. And now they're saying when they spray Roundup on berries or something, it stops mold. It's like, okay, great. Never mind that it's completely toxic, and it's killing people. That's okay. And it's killing organisms, and it's killing the actual berries that you're putting it on and all of that. But hey, no, it's great. It's going to make them last longer on the grocery store shelf. So by all means.
And at least I don't have mosquitoes in my backyard, right? when there are other ways to take care of it.
There are.
But here's my question, or I think what we have to really ask ourselves more. We always will find ourselves within a community dynamic. If it's family, if it's friendships, if it's church, if it's school, if it's your workplace, if it's an online community, it doesn't matter. We're never just alone, right? No matter if you choose to or not, you are part of a collaborative community setting. And here's the question that I would ask myself: are my flow and my actions, how do they impact the community as a whole? Because sometimes our flow can be very selfish as well, where we just think about me, and it's the easiest way out and the least, the path of least resistance. So I'm just not going to do it anyway. Those teachings, there's just a fine line between what does really work and how does it work against the art of collaboration, right?
Well, and it's that accountability, it's holding oneself accountable, not just to themselves when it's convenient, but to the things that we have aligned with, that we are saying yes to. If I say yes to something and I say I'm going to show up, then I am making a commitment. And going with the flow is also keeping that commitment. Now, that also means, though, that if I'm in that commitment and we're collaborating together and we all come to this understanding collectively that there's too much push and pull and we need to maybe redirect, or there needs to be a restructuring, that's one thing. That's not letting go of your commitment. That's actually communicating and working together and finding perhaps a better way, or understanding when something isn't a good fit. But simply going, I got too much stuff to work on and it's coming up for me right now, I got to go work on my stuff. Well, while I completely acknowledge and commend that we all need to work on our stuff, if we've got stuff coming up when we're in a community, then the stuff that's coming up has everything to do with how we relate to community and how we're meant to interact with that community.
Yes, and there's a different way of showing up when it comes to dealing with your own stuff within community and when you close the door behind you, right? There's just a different way in how you take actions, how you reflect on it, how you interact. So for example, if going back to the kids, because again, that's a great example because we're already teaching them
5 minutes, just FYI. 5
yes,
okay.
So for example, if they have, something really important going on and one of them is like, well, I don't feel like it, I'm not going to do it, and can't be with this uncomfortable feeling of having to show up, and literally embarrasses the entire team in front of someone really important and just like, yeah, this is it, and just kind of being snarky about it, there's a different way of saying, oh my God, can I be with this uncomfortable feeling right now of having to show up? Can I rely on my teammates and still show that respect and that commitment and compassion that I agree to? And then just for the moment, sit with that uncomfortable feeling. And once I close the door behind me, I can work through this, why this came up and what was actually happening inside of me that I suddenly, either started to panic or I just started to feel like I don't have the right answer. Right. Those kind of things. I think
I can work with my team on that too. Like we can show up, get it done, and then I can actually have a conversation with my team and say, wow, this came up for me and I was feeling really uncomfortable.
And as adults can learn from that. We can look at the children and say, where are we doing that in our own life and how are we showing up there as well? Like I said, there's a different way of taking actions and showing up and how to present ourselves from our essence within the group dynamic, and then stepping away and say, okay, this is what just happened. But we don't have to let it all out within the group setting in a public field, where everyone is like, okay, what was going on? Like, what's happening? Because not everyone within the group dynamic understands what's going on between two people.
No.
But if two people fight within a community dynamic and the rest watches, I'm like, are all people like that? And then people start to have their stuff coming up, right?
Well, that brings us to that issue of trust, right? People
trust, respect, compassion, and really thinking, can I just sit with this uncomfortable feeling right now within the community setting and then deal with it later when I'm out of the field of people looking at me or being interacting with them.
Yeah,
it really is. I think as adults we have to ask ourselves those questions as well. We have to really take a look at, how do I show up? How do I want to show up? How do I choose to show up? Can I be okay with the uncomfortable feeling when I committed to showing up?
And when I feel uncomfortable, does it really mean I'm not in the flow? That's not true. It doesn't mean that.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that.
Yes.
Being uncomfortable does not mean that you're not in the flow. So we are running shy, and I don't, we just put a lot of questions out there, but I think we also came up with a few really interesting ideas. And I love that you're saying everybody kind of ask yourself some of those questions, because I think it's so important for us to hold ourselves accountable. And we'd love to also hear your opinions, which you can comment on the Facebook group, or share this around. Check us out. Go to our link, newearthcc.org, newearthcc.org.
Yes.
Our Facebook link is there. Our group is there. We want you in this conversation. We want you as part of our community.
We need to.
Exactly.
We need to have people in this conversation.
Exactly. And yes, it's uncomfortable. It's not always the most comfortable thing for us to even talk about this on a podcast live, where we're not scripted. We didn't prepare. We didn't think about this before. We're having very real, very candid, very stream of consciousness conversations. And we may not say stuff that you guys like. And hey, it is what it is. Everybody's entitled to their opinions and ideas, and we're certainly not telling anybody what to do. We are, however, inviting everybody to consider that there is a different way of doing this. And maybe we've never done it before, and that's okay, because that's how new outcomes, that's how new realities are created. They can't be created from the past. They have to be created from the future, from something new and something different.
Yeah.
So, as always, Isabel, it is a joy and a pleasure to have these conversations. It's a good thing we have a time limit.
We would have gone, way long with this.
We would have, for sure. So until next time, everybody, much love, many blessings. And remember that, together we rise.
Very much.